It's another Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, here hanging out with our Thunder coverage team, our Thunder beat writer Darnell Mayberry, who's across the street at the Thunder training facility, our columnist Jenni Carlson, who's right downstairs here at 9000 North Broadway here in Oklahoma City. Unavailable is our other Thunder beat writer John Rohde. He's jetting on his way to Los Angeles for Friday night's game between the Lakers and the Thunder. But guys, we'll carry on without him. And let's start with how the Thunder carry on beyond the Washington Wizards debacle. Jenni and Darnell, you guys were both there for the win last night, Wednesday night, for the victory over the Minnesota Timberwolves. A get-well win if you've ever seen one. Guys, my first question is, did that wipe away the stain of that horrible loss Monday night in Washington?
Well, I mean, it sure didn't hurt. I mean, you don't want to follow up a bad loss with another bad loss. And considering the pieces that Minnesota was missing, it would have been a really bad loss had the Thunder lost to Minnesota. Kevin Love's out for an extended period. Ended up J.J. Barea was out with some back spasms. So they were really limited last night. I mean, they lost. Darnell, I mean, talk about going bananas. People would have gone absolutely bananas. But so, you got to win that game. And they did win it convincingly. So it's better than a loss. I'm not sure it erases Washington, though. Darnell, you were there. You saw it up close and personal.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jenni. I don't think it wipes it away what happened in Washington, because that's one of those defeats that you look back on at the end of the season and you say, when you're fighting for playoff position and you say, we wish we could have had that one or we should have had that one. So that was a terrible loss. I think it was probably the worst loss in Thunder franchise history. And when you lose to a team missing so many key pieces like that, the worst team in the league, you're the best team in the league, nothing really wipes that away.
We're talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder's loss in Washington on Monday night. A loss, Darnell, that you were there to witness, a loss that took place despite the fact that the Wizards were without John Wall and Nene and who else? I mean, I know Wes Unseld wasn't there, and neither was Phil Chenier. At least he was courtside announcing it. But anybody who can play in Washington apparently wasn't available, and yet they lost. So, Darnell, let me ask you this. Does the Thunder's struggles in that game, do they reflect poorly on the Thunder's status as a title contender?
No, it happens. Miami went up there and they lost to the same Washington Wizards team that didn't have John Wall. So I think over the course of an 82-game season, you're going to get losses that are either, one, people call schedule losses, or two, the fact that people just sometimes have a better game than you. You have to give the Washington Wizards credit. They had a better game than the Thunder, and I don't think that has any bearing on what might happen in May and June.
Of course, you and Barry talked about this, Barry Trammel's talked about this too, is that you've labeled it the worst loss in Oklahoma City Thunder franchise history, and I'm wondering what you think makes it so. Besides the fact that the Washington's so bad, besides adding on to the fact that they didn't have their people, what about that loss was particularly, horrible?
Well, you have to start with the fact that the Thunder was healthy. The Wizards didn't have John Wall, Nene, Jordan Crawford, Cartier Martin, and Trevor Booker. That's 5 key players, 3 of their best players and 2 key reserves. So that's the main thing. And then the second thing is this was the best team losing to the worst team. The Thunder went into that game as the best team in the league, and the Washington Wizards came in with 4 wins. So that's a major factor. Aside from those obvious facts, you had the Washington Wizards coming in as the lowest scoring team in the league. The Thunder was the highest scoring team in the league. They gave up 101 points to a team that only averages 90 going into that game. So the first quarter offense or defense was atrocious. They gave up 30 points in that opening period, and they just weren't with it defensively throughout the entire game. And that can't happen, especially against a team as bad as Washington.
Jenni, the fact that we're still talking, it's Thursday, that game was Monday night, the fact that we're still talking about this sort of qualifies it as something. Also, but the idea that this is the worst loss in Oklahoma City Thunder history, I mean, I start thinking back to that 1-12 start, Solis Arena, PJ Carlissimo, before he became the genius in Brooklyn, coaching a team that didn't really even seem to care. I think of those losses, and I'm saying surely there had to be one in there that was worse than Monday night.
Well, there was no doubt some ugly losses. I was there for the game that they lost to the Hornets that was PJ's last, the one that they then afterwards said to him, why don't you stay here and we'll take the team plane and go on to New Orleans. So I was there for that game. And then that was definitely an uncomfortable moment because it felt like the honeymoon was over, that people were just really frustrated by the low level of play that they were seeing. But I think this one has to, definitely rise to the top of, when you're talking about worse losses, because that team you knew was not going to be in a lot of ball games. Just the talent level they had, they were so young at that point. I mean, we talk about how young they are. They were really young then. Kevin Durant, a second-year guy, Russell Westbrook, a rookie, James Harden, a glint in this team's eye. So they didn't have nearly the pieces that they've had in recent years and that they have now. So for a team that, is so and has proven already how good they are.
Jenni will unfreeze in just a second here, and we'll pick right up from there. Darnell, while we're waiting for Jenni, it wouldn't be a Washington Wizards game without me bringing.
To go to Washington and give.
There she's back. No, she's not. Jenni, you're back with us. You froze up. Finish your thought.
No, I think for the fact that, the Thunder has already shown that this is a good team. I mean, like Darnell said, best in the league. They've proven how good they are. For them to go in there and to allow 30 points in the first quarter and then have, I think it was a 10-minute lapse when they didn't score. I mean, to me, those are the things that stand out. And you wonder, where's this high level of play that they espouse to want to play regardless of who they're playing. They definitely weren't playing up to their own standards that night.
Guys, it wouldn't be a Washington Wizards Oklahoma City game without us sort of taking a short trip down memory lane. Darnell Mayberry grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, a follower of the Washington Wizards. I grew up in the Baltimore, Washington area. I have pictures of me and Elvin Hayes on photo day. They're not on my walls. Darnell doesn't believe it. I have to bring them in as photographic evidence that I was once a Bullets fan of all things. So Darnell, every time you go back there and you write about these things, you write about the ovation that Kevin Durant gets. You write about some sort of the spirit of the arena, and I just wonder, as you went back to your hometown, your second hometown, what you thought about the state of basketball there. Was it as soulless and as sort of a dead arena as you've seen there in the past?
Well, it wasn't as bad as last year, and that was simply because the Thunder is coming off an NBA Finals appearance, and most of the fans there was announced at 16,000 plus, and most of them were there to see Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and the rest of the Thunder cast. So last year when we went up there before the Thunder made the Finals, the place was dead. I mean, even this year, they showed a lady on the kiss cam who was sleeping. And I hate to throw, sort of my team under the bus, but that's a bad franchise right now. And, I mentioned to a guy, it's your job to run the kiss cam, yet you show someone on the kiss cam on the Jumbotron sleeping. The guy says, well, they must have been sleeping too. So, it just kind of shows you what's going on in the Wizards arena right now, and it's a bad franchise. But you know what? John Wall's coming back, so there's hope for all of us.
They got great uniforms. They've come back to that. All they need to do is get back to the Bullets. I mean, I would do that. Also, we're a long way though, Jenni, from the days when the Wizards came here with a ball squad with Caron Butler and Gilbert Arenas and Antoine Jameson and Eton Thomas and David West hitting a last-second shot to beat.
That should not have counted.
And Darnell running out onto the court. Correct me, did he almost run out onto the court waving his arms saying that didn't count? I thought he did.
I don't recall that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, no, it does. It's weird when you think about how some of these franchises cycle, teams that, traditionally haven't been great and then they get good for a minute. But this, I mean, without John Wall, the Wizards are really in a sad state. I mean, it's really been unfortunate that he's had some injuries and hasn't been around, but I think he can be a guy that can maybe be transformative, but they got to get some other guys to surround him with. I mean, we saw when Chris Paul was in New Orleans that even if you're a great point guard, if those passes go to somebody that can't hit a shot or can't make a layup or can't even corral the pass, how frustrating that gets. So they got to get some guys to go around John Wall, because if you're a point guard of that style, and John Wall can create some for himself, but he's got to get some help. And right now it doesn't really look like they have much in the way of help, even if he was healthy.
You're watching Thunder Thursday on News OK Live, and Thunder Thursday, as always, is sponsored by our good friends at Advent Heat, Air, and Plumbing. If you got any problems with your heating, air conditioning, or plumbing, please call our friends at Advent. Guys, let's talk. Speaking about trying to get some help, trying to get some guys in here, the trade deadline approaches. What are we, about 5-6 weeks away? And my question to you, true or false, the Thunder will make a deal before the trade deadline. What do you got, Darnell?
I've been leaning toward true all season. I just think that there is a lot of assets that Sam Presti has at his disposal, whether it's draft picks or young players or even older players who aren't in a rotation right now. I'm talking to you, Eric Maynor. I think there's just a lot of different things that Sam Presti can do. And, you look at that second unit, I know our columnist Barry Trammell has written about it a lot. He thinks the second unit is horrible. In fact, he has a blog post scheduled to post today at 3:30 p.m. on newsok.com that says that the Thunder could go after a guy who the Thunder fans hate in J.J. Barea. So keep your eye out for that. And, at some point I think there might have to be a move made to shore up the second unit and to get some more help in there. Because Kevin Martin, you've seen when he struggles, the team struggles, and they don't have that third threat like they did with James Harden. So I think there's just too many question marks right now. The depth behind Kendrick Perkins at center, the depth behind Russell Westbrook at point guard. People have wanted a more natural three behind Kevin Durant for years. So there's a lot of different things that this team still needs, and I think that Sam Presti has too many assets to not go out and look for something.
A playmaker with the second unit, somebody to guard LeBron James. Jenni, I put Darnell down for a true. What should I write you down for, true or false?
Well, I still am going to lead towards that they stand pat. I don't think they're going to make a trade, but at the same time, this is one of those times when I really wouldn't be surprised if they did. There's been some other times when they've made trades that it's kind of surprised me. I thought when they did the Jeff Green trade, that was a surprise. The Kendrick Perkins trade was I didn't see that one coming. And then lo and behold, they make that big deal with Jeff Green going to Boston and Kendrick Perkins coming here. So, I wouldn't be surprised.
We're running into some technical difficulty with Jenni. She's right here in the newsroom, which makes that a little bit unusual. She'll get back here with us in just a second, Darnell.
Though, if they did pull the trigger, but I show them and they can get something done, I think they'll definitely give it a try.
Speaking of that getting something done, Darnell referred to Barry's blog, which, to tell you the truth, I've been listening to the radio. I've been thinking about this. J.J. Barea is one of Barry's favorite topics. I sort of talked him into that blog last night while listening to the pregame show. So I'm going to ask you guys, true or false, J.J. Barea is a fit for this team? Darnell?
I haven't given it much thought, but, I'm a fan of Reggie Jackson. I think that's no secret at this point. I love his length. I love his defensive potential. I love his versatility on offense. So he can bring you more over time than I think J.J. Barea could. So in sort of sticking with what this team has done, and that's building from the ground up, getting a team together that can grow together, I don't think that they go out and get a J.J. Barea type, because they have a Reggie Jackson who's 22, 23 years old, and that he can continue to grow with this team and build with Durant and Westbrook and Ibaka and those guys. So I think they'd like to stand pat in that aspect and see what they can get out of him in the future.
Jenni, the salary, J.J. Barea, $4 million. I know he signed with T-Wolves and left Dallas. but it wasn't for a boatload of cash. That seems to fit. Also, the fact that he can sort of play on and off the ball, that seems to fit. Another great thing is, and I think Barry has blogged about this, is that, hey, you eliminate a guy who you had no idea how to stop, so you don't have to defend J.J. Barea anymore. You buying it that he's a fit for this team or not?
I think he sure could be. I think the interesting thing is that I feel like I'm about ready to have a little flashback here and say about Reggie Jackson what we used to say about Russell Westbrook. But is Reggie Jackson really a point guard? I mean, I think he can play point, but I feel like he could maybe play some one and some two. Like, he's got enough flexibility in his body type and his game where you could almost see, having that smaller lineup with the second unit and play a Barea, play Reggie, and play Kevin Martin. I think that could be really interesting to see how they could affect defenses. So I think Reggie Jackson and J.J. Barea, if they were on the same roster, I don't think it necessarily means that one plays and the other one sits. I think they could probably play together. So I think he could be a fit. Now, I don't know if they're going to pull the trigger, but as Darnell said, lots of pieces, and I think those draft picks that Sam Presti always seems to love, I think that could really come in handy. I mean, look at how many options they have to package up players and picks and how attractive that could be to another team.
Speaking of, we're talking about players they could acquire. Let's talk about players that they have and players who are left after the big James Harden trade. It seems like, hey, I think we went actually a couple Thunder Thursday hangouts without even mentioning the name James Harden. So I'll break the streak here and ask you, Darnell, name the Thunder player who has benefited most from James's departure.
I think it's Serge Ibaka, and I don't think it's even close. When you look at what he's been able to do offensively, he's averaging 14 and a half points a game, a career high for him. He's getting more opportunities in the offense, especially in the half-court sets with Russell Westbrook and that pick and pop that they used to run so well with Nenad Kirstic and Russell Westbrook. So Serge Ibaka's game has just taken off this season. He's really flourishing now that he doesn't have to be, at best, the fourth option alongside Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, and James Harden.
Jenni, since Darnell says that's an obvious answer, I'll take that question a little bit differently. If you're going to say Serge Ibaka, then I want to ask you this question right from the chat, and the guest wants to know, why does Serge Ibaka always want to smell the basketball?
Well, we've had that conversation on press row that he might want to think about who else has touched that ball before he goes and puts his nose and or mouth on it. But I think the answer to the question is he does it to sort of remind himself of the just sort of the tactile nature of the game, the smell, that leather, the sweat that I'm sure is on there. It's just sort of a reminder of the game at its, I guess, its most pure form, if you will. Although, again, I'm not sure pure would describe all the hands that have been on that basketball. But I think that's it. Darnell, you've actually talked to him about that before, haven't you?
Yeah, I've talked to him about it, and, the language barrier prevented me from getting a clean answer, but, he just kind of says it's just something that he does. He just wants to have a routine, and that's a routine. And fortunately, none of the refs have yanked it from him, like that situation up in Toronto that got that one player, I think it was Amir Johnson, kicked out of the game.
Well, and last night, of course, maybe that's what Serge Ibaka should have done. Maybe he should have taken a better sniff of the ball. Maybe he just really inhaled the basketball rather than bouncing it, slamming it to the court. That was one of the oddest well, of course, the oddest technical is the one Amir Johnson got when the ref took the ball away from him. But that's the weirdest technical I've ever seen a Thunder player get. What was he doing?
Just angry at himself, but I've not seen anybody get a $2,000 fine for spiking the ball.
In the NFL, I think it's been done. Darnell, what was Serge's response about that?
Well, we didn't get to talk to him about it last night, but obviously he had an and one opportunity, and he missed a bunny at the rim, and he could have had a 3-point play, but he missed that layup and had to go to the line and shoot free throws. It was a real odd sequence, but I thought the irony of it is that Serge Ibaka, I've written about it time and time again. He has trouble catching the ball. His hands aren't that great, and he slams the ball down, and he doesn't catch it on the way up. I mean, how's that for irony?
It's irony. It is also amusing, and but undoubtedly, he's the player who's taken the step this year. He's the guy who's really the Thunder's benefit and growth. You know, of course, Durant and Westbrook have improved, as they always do, but the big step has been from Serge Ibaka. Guys, on the chat here, they've asked us to talk about trades. Darnell, do you hear any other trade winds blowing through the Thunder's organization? Are there any other players that that Oklahoma City could be looking at, or that they may be connected with?
Well, I just think that whatever happens, I know that whatever happens is going to be small. It's not going to be a major deal.
It's almost like a standing in. Here he goes.
Salary than they're sending out, then I think they're going to. If they take on any more salary than they're sending out, then they're going to hit the tax threshold, and they can't be in the tax this season, because once that repeater tax kicks in next year, then 3 out of the 4 years you're going to be in the tax. You're going to have to pay repeater tax penalties. And the Thunder, with Kevin Martin, they want to re-sign him, and Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and Kendrick Perkins. They're going to be a tax team, so they got to be careful to not exceed the tax this year. So anything they make is going to be small. Any move they make is going to be small, a minor move. I look at guys like, they've been reportedly interested in Samario Samuels, easy for me to say, the ex-Cleveland Cavaliers forward, who's a defensive guy. He's tough, kind of one of those guys you talked about, probably being able to guard a LeBron James type. Another guy I looked at is Sam Young, who was recently released by the Indiana Pacers. I've always liked his defensive toughness, and he can give you a little bit of three-point shooting as well. So those are the type of names that I look at. And obviously there was a recent report out of Philadelphia that they were interested in Eric Maynor. What they can give back, I'm not sure. I mean, the Kwame Brown's name has been thrown out there. Evan Turner's a guy that Philly was sort of down on coming into this year, but he's been playing well, so I don't know if they want to give him up now, but you keep your eye on those type of names.
Okay, guys, about the freeze up, I've just figured out something. I'm going to give it a standing 8 count until I declare it out, and then ask another question. So we won't but the freeze gets a standing 8 count, and we'll count it down. Speaking of the countdown, there's a countdown on in Sacramento apparently now, and that would take basketball back to a sister city of sorts for Oklahoma City. Darnell, you spent some time there, Seattle. Word out of the Great Northwest yesterday was that there had been an offer to the Maloof brothers there in Sacramento to buy the Kings and relocate them to Seattle. You had a story sort of about what Oklahoma City would be on the hook for, which is basically nothing. The $30 million that they had agreed to pay, that's expired because they didn't have a team or an arena deal by 2009. They would send the name back presumably. But Darnell, what do you make of this news out of Seattle and Sacramento? Are the Kings headed to Seattle?
Well, it certainly seems like it's only a matter of time at this point. I think the Kings have been in transition or in limbo almost for forever, and it just seems like they're on their way out one way or another. And it's unfortunate whenever a situation like this happens. And Nick Carlson said it best. He'll be happy for Seattle because of the way that whole situation went down. But he'll also be sad for Sacramento Kings fans because he's seen firsthand how upsetting and disappointing and heartbreaking it is for a fan base to lose its team. And as we know, those Kings fans were some of the most rabid fans in the NBA for years and years and years. It was sort of Oklahoma City before Oklahoma City, and it's unfortunate if that happens. But this is a big business world of sports, and this is the world we live in.
We talked about irony, Jenni. The irony is the folks in Seattle sort of shook their fists at Oklahoma City and sometimes shook other things at Oklahoma City and said, you have blood on your hands. It seems like situations have reversed now, where Seattle is now on the verge of stealing another city's team. Do we get to call it even between us and the Emerald City?
I don't know if anything's even. I don't think Sacramento fans will think that. But, Darnell's right. It's a business, and clearly the Sacramento Kings have had their troubles, financial, arena. I mean, all of those things that have been well documented. A lot of people felt like they were going to be gone before this season. So the fact that they're still in Sacramento was a huge win for the city. But clearly still a lot of issues going on. And it sounds like Seattle, obviously it's going to come at Sacramento's loss, but it sounds like Seattle's got some things figured out. They're talking new arena. It sounds like that if they get this move with the Kings would play a couple years at the old Key Arena, which was a sticking point for the Thunder staying there. The franchise staying there previously, but now it sounds like they're going to get an arena deal that they'd be able to move into in a couple years. So they've definitely addressed some of those issues. And, is it right? Is it wrong that they had to build a new arena to get this done? That's the world we live in. To have a good arena is important nowadays in the NBA. So, it's going to be unfortunate for the Sacramento folks, because Sacramento's the kind of place that, when the NBA left Seattle, you felt like at some point it was going to go back there. But if the Kings leave Sacramento, that's one of those places that it's really hard to think about the NBA ever going back there. It just seems like it would be a really far-fetched notion for another NBA franchise to get there. So that's sad that the NBA would be leaving Sacramento and probably not return.
Darnell, you've compared their fan base to ours. One thing you really can't compare Sacramento to, though, and which one is the ownership. It seems like the Maloofs have been sort of had their bags packed to head out of town for a long time. How much of this really just comes down to who owns the Kings?
I think it's the vast majority of this whole issue, and it's another kind of bit of irony, because not long ago we were seeing real sports features on HBO about the Maloofs and how they're this new breed of NBA owner, and how they were so exciting and just so great for the NBA. And now all of a sudden, how quickly things have changed, because now it seems like they can't do anything right. And in the court of public opinion, they can't do anything right, and their names are mud. I mean, they're literally, they have nothing. People have nothing good to say about them. And they feel like they drove that team and that franchise out of town. So I think you have to look at the Maloofs and say that better run team would have kept that Sacramento Kings franchise in the city of Sacramento.
Let's get you guys out of here on an on-court topic with the Oklahoma City Thunder, which plays at Los Angeles on Friday night, Sunday at Portland, and then Monday, the Suns' 3-game road trip out there. John Rohde's on all of it. Darnell, is that right? He's making the whole tour. And Darnell, you blogged about this today. It's something that we sort of take for granted, and it's both sides of it. It seems like the Thunder plays a lot of teams that aren't at full speed. The latest was Kevin Love out. The latest was no J.J. Barea on Wednesday night. But on the other hand, and the only thing the Thunder can control is the fact that the Thunder always seems to have its full complement of players. They've been here in Oklahoma City. What is this, the 5th season, Darnell? And really 4 of them as a serious NBA contender. And of those 4 years, you really have to scratch your head and dig deep to come up with serious injuries. What do you attribute that to?
The grace of God? I don't know. Kevin Durant, fortunately for him, he's never been really seriously injured. He's had a few ankle sprains that he's had to overcome. Russell Westbrook, he's had some nicks and knacks, but has never missed a game. Serge Ibaka has had incredible health. Kendrick Perkins has been the only one really who's been beat up. And Thabo Sefolosha, same thing, just a couple nagging things here and there. He had a major foot problem, I think it was last season. But other than that, this team has been incredibly fortunate, and I don't think there's anything you can attribute good health to. I think it's just something that you either have or you don't.
Jenni, Kendrick Perkins brought some of his maladies with him from Boston. Of course, he He missed most of the first half of a season and got hurt in the NBA Finals. Westbrook, of course, that's a guy that we know. He's never missed an NBA game. Does the Thunder have Mr. Miyagi across the street at its training facility, using his hands and fixing injuries? Or really do they owe it to youth and their sports medicine staff?
I think it's a combination of all of that. I think it has to be luck. I think it has to be youth. I think it has to be the individual, pain thresholds. I mean, we've seen Russell Westbrook take some tumbles, and Kevin Durant to that point too. Take some hits and knockdowns that, probably were fairly jarring, and probably the next day created, some issues. But they've continued to play, and I think that's important too. But I mean, I think they do have a good track record of having a staff that takes care of those guys, and they are really at the top end of doing everything they can do to help those guys in recovery. I remember last year seeing some of those guys in some compression type of garb after some of these games that had quick turnaround, with the accelerated schedule and the condensed schedule of last year after the lockout. It really seemed like that they did whatever they could to try to help these guys out. But I think, as Darnell said, grace of God and limber joints and bones, may be the thing to look at most. But I think it has to be attributed to a combination of all that because, guys get rolled up on, unfortunately, all the time, and stuff can happen, even with the best of training staff. So they've had luck, but they've, had some other stuff going for them too. I don't think you can discount any of that.
Russell Westbrook as Bruce Willis in the movie Unbreakable. What do you think, Darnell? The remake starring Russell Westbrook.
I prefer him as whoever played Wolverine in the movie X-Men, because that's my nickname for him. Wolverine Westbrook.
You're pushing it. I got to appreciate that. Hey, listen, guys, that's all for this edition of Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. Thunder Thursday, as always, is sponsored by our good friends at Advent Heat, Air, and Plumbing. If you have any problems with any of that, call our good friends at Advent. And you can stay with the best coverage team every day in News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman. Darnell, enjoy some time off. See ya.